Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome to my channel. This is a Books Beside My Bed video where I recap the books that I've read in the last 7 days. So if you're new here, welcome, and if you're very familiar with the series, welcome back. Today I'm going to be sharing the books that I read between the 11th and the 17th of September. I read 6 things this week that I'm going to be talking about in this video. There are a couple of other books that I did pick up for various reading vlogs. So this week you're going to have 2 reading vlogs plus this wrap up. Plenty of books to be recommended. In fact, I think by the time this video goes up, I'm actually having to upload it later than normal, so you will already have seen the first reading vlog and then another one will come out on Friday. For the 6 books that I'm going to talk about in this video, I have read 1,540 pages and I've read a total of 353 books for the year. So if you watched my last week's Books Beside My Bed video, which I will leave linked on the screen, I was rereading the Priest series by Sierra Simone and I got up to the 1.5 novella. So I kicked off this reading week with Sinner by Sierra Simone, which is book 2 in the series and quite possibly my favourite book in the series. I love this book a lot. This is Taboo age gap romance between Sean Bell and Zenny. And Zenny is in training to become a nun. She is about a month shy of taking her vows, and Sean and Zenny run into each other at a very big fancy function. Sean doesn't recognize Zenny, who is the younger sister of his best friend, and the two flirt and he has no idea who she is, but she knows who he is. And then he has to leave because his mother is sick in this story. She has cancer, so that's a huge content warning for the story because he's processing that. A couple of days later, he ends up running into Zenny again through his work and discovers that she is about to take her vows, and he can't believe it because he's ridiculously attracted to her, and she actually propositions him with the request that for the month leading up to her taking her vows, she would like to live her life to make sure that she's made the right decision. She thinks that she is safe in her decision to become a nun, but it has been told to her, you know, go out, live your life, make sure that you are truly committed to this. And so she asks him to teach her about sex and to give her this 1 month. And he's really reluctant at first because of A, the age gap, B, the relationship with his best friend and so on. But the two have this really insane chemistry. And like all of the books in the series, Sierra Simone does delve into faith and religion and belief. Sean has really turned away from his faith as a result of everything that has happened in his family, particularly the suicide of his younger sister. And so he has some really interesting conversations, particularly with Zenny, but also with other characters in the series around faith and belief and how people can reconcile truly bad things happening with a God who supposedly should not be letting those truly bad things happen to people. And it is just amazing. They are 2 really wonderful characters. This is probably one of my favourite age gap romances because it's a significant age gap. There's about 14 or 15 years between them. And Sean Bell is one of my favourite heroes. And he pops up again in the 3rd book and I adore him even more then. Then I read Saint, or reread Saint, because I did read that last week as well. So I will not go into it in too much depth. It is the 3rd book in the Priest series. Go check out my last week's wrap up for more information. But this follows Aidan Bell, who is Sean's younger brother, who upended his life and became a monk. And it is his second chance relationship with his ex-partner, Elijah, who is Zenny's older brother and Sean's best friend. The only thing I'll say, because I'm not going to go into the plot of this one because I've already talked about it, is that please, please, please check the content warnings for this book. This one does deal heavily in suicidal ideation and depression and a few other bits and pieces that you might want to be aware of before you go into it. It is much more slow burn than the other 2 books in the series and it's fantastic. In particular with this book, definitely read Sierra Simone's foreword before you do anything else. Then I read Contagion by Amanda Milo. This is a sci-fi romance story and I know this is one that Bree from In Love and Words has read and really liked. It is a novella and it follows Simi, who is a very bug-like alien being who is kidnapped and experimented on by humans. And when he escapes, he stumbles across a human woman who has also been kidnapped and is being held in a cage. And he helps her escape and the two get out of this facility. And then the 2 of them realize they're on an unfamiliar planet and they have to try and find civilization. And of course they get treated very differently because they look very different. One of the really interesting things that happens in this story is that we discover that Simi is a severe germaphobe and he thinks that everything on the planet is going to kill him. Aurora, who is the heroine, just finds the whole thing hilarious, but also spends a lot of time calming Simi down and going, no, this is not going to kill you, you're going to be fine. It was just a very cute, very quirky sci-fi romance with very different characters, and I really enjoyed it. And that one is available on KU. Then I read books 3 and 4 in the Malik Brothers series by Jessica Gadziella, and this series follows the sons of the head loan shark in Navasing Bank. And I have to say, Mark's story was probably my least favourite of the 4 books. It's his relationship with Scotty, and they meet in a big box family store thing in the middle of a robbery during the day. And after the fact, Mark realises that Scotty has to be part of the crew that was robbing the store. And eventually he tracks her down, and the two realise that they have an attraction to one another, and there's a whole bunch of things that happen around it. Of all the ones, this one, it didn't feel forced, but it also didn't hold my attention as some of the other books in the series, and I haven't quite worked out why that was. It was still a really solid read. I'm really glad that I read it. And it also kickstarted the storyline for Eli, which is the next book. And Eli is the youngest of the Malik brothers, and at the end of Mark, he ends up being arrested and sentenced to time in prison. What we find out in Eli's book is what happened in the moments leading up to his arrest, a little bit about what happened during his time in prison, and then his story really starts when he finally is released. It's his relationship with a woman named Autumn, who he actually never met before he was released from prison, but the two have a connection because she was one of the witnesses to his arrest. At that time, he had a dog, and he obviously had to leave the dog behind because he was taken into custody. And Autumn couldn't bear to see this dog freaking out about his owner being taken away from him, and so she took the dog in. While Eli was in prison, she decided to send him little updates on the dog. So she'd send a photo of the dog, etc. And they sort of began to correspond, but eventually Eli stopped responding as well. And when he comes out of prison, he decides to track down this woman. And I think it's almost like a grateful sort of situation where he just wants to say thank you for that human connection, because he cut off his family during this time. And it's their relationship. And Autumn is a really fantastic character. She runs a sex shop. She's unapologetically who she is. Her sister is freaking amazing. I really liked the dynamic between Eli and Autumn. This one does have more of a BDSM spin on it. Eli is a very dominant character. There is bondage and flogging in this book, so be aware of that if that's not your thing. But I think of all of the books, this one, I really, really enjoyed the character dynamics between Autumn and Eli and where they are in their lives, and it was just great. So I'm glad that I have wrapped up the Malik Brothers series. And then the last book that I read this week was True as Steel by Regine Abel. Regine Abel has written I Married a Lizardman and I Married a Naga, which I loved immensely. I loved those books. True as Steel didn't wow me as much as those ones did. It is a science fiction romance, and at the beginning of the book we find out that there is this planet that is ruled by an emperor, and he is not a very nice man, and he's basically set on genocide, but he's discovered that there are some traitors in his soldier ranks, and among those are some cyborgs, his elite soldiers. And so he sentences the lot to one of his prison planets, along with some human traitors. That's where we meet Jarrag and Tamarin, who have both been branded traitors, and they're on the same transport ship. And when an explosion goes off on the ship while it's in transit, Jarrag and Tamarin end up in the same escape pod, and the two have to work together to survive on a planet that Tamarin has a few ties to, but Jarrag really doesn't, and he's trying to get back to his cyborg group pack thing, but he's lost connection with them, and the two end up having to rely on one another. Part of the reason why this one didn't wow me as much as some of the others is I felt like Jarrag as a hero was a little bit stilted, just in the way that he spoke and his delivery of lines and things like that, which normally doesn't bother me, but it just, for some reason, it didn't work. And that's okay, because I mean, you can like an author and not like some of their books, which is totally fine, because I'm still going to be going back into Regine Abel's backlist. But yeah, this one just, it didn't do as much for me as some of the other ones. So unfortunately, this one was a bit of a miss, but it was not badly written. It just probably didn't hit the notes that I really like in sci-fi romances. All right, so those are all the books that I have read this week. In the comments, let me know if you have read any of these or if you're planning on picking them up, or alternatively, feel free to share something that you have been enjoying reading over the last 7 days. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a planet emoji. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.